Welcome in again. You've been drinking up two 12-packs of our video podcast, Musings for the Mountains. This is the 24th edition. This is presented by WVSports.com. I'm managing editor of the site, Keenan Cummings.
And I'm staff writer for the site, Patrick Kotnik.
We've got a lot of things to discuss today. We're going to talk football, we're going to talk basketball, we're going to talk personnel, we're even going to talk a little baseball. We're going to get into something, we're going to get all of that in order. First thing is probably the most pressing news item of the day. Josh Sills, starting right guard, is going to be out for the year after undergoing surgery, season-ending surgery. West Virginia loses a lot with Sills. They played without him in the last two games, but anytime you lose a guy that started 24 games as a centerpiece of your offensive line, can play center, can play guard, can play tackle, it's a loss for the program.
It is, Keenan, and like you said, Josh, clearly one of the better offensive linemen for West Virginia. Probably you could say second best behind Colton McKivitz. Big loss for his team. But now it's just a question of developing depth behind him. Now they've had other guys play in his place at guard. They had Chase Barrett, who Neal Brown said probably played his best game against Kansas. John Hughes, you would expect to be in the mix as well. I'm very interested to see just what they do, because we were talking about a few days ago, like, hey, if Sills comes back, how are they going to factor in rotation and all that. So now I'm interested to see, now without Josh Sills for the rest of the season, what happens from here. Do they go do they play with the starting five the whole game like they did against Kansas, or do they continue to mix guys in? I think they'll continue to mix guys in, but it's kind of a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if there is any good news here, it's the fact that West Virginia's had to do this for two games. Sills had missed two games before, so it's a little bit about finding out what you got. I think ideally West Virginia wants to play 6, 7, 8 guys. Can they get to that number? We'll see. Other personnel news I thought was interesting. Vandarius Cowan's back. Back for the first time, I guess. His suspension's lifted. 4-game suspension that he had. He'll be in the mix. They're going to use him a lot in practice over the next 2 weeks to find out where he's at and if he can help this team. If there's a spot that needs help on this team, it's linebacker, both inside and bandit behind Quandarius Qualls. He's been playing bandit, so it wouldn't be a surprise to see him there. I think it will be interesting to see how he factors in, though, and what his role is going to be immediately and moving forward. Physically, West Virginia just doesn't have a lot of guys like him. Other personnel news, Dreshaun Miller. We've had a lot of questions about him on the blue lot. I asked Neal about him. He's out. He had surgery. He's rehabbing that right now. They're going to make a determination here in the next couple weeks to determine if he is able to play at all this year, if he's going to be a factor, if it's going to be something that happens down the road. Charlie Benton, on the other hand, the linebacker, is healthy. He's coming off an injury for himself last year that cost him the entire season outside of 13 snaps against Tennessee. He's just not being used right now. He's healthy, he's ready to go, but he's down the depth chart. And I think that if he wants to be a factor, there's a chance there. That spot has struggled at times at that Mike linebacker, but right now that's where we're at. Moving to Kansas. Moving back to Kansas. Patrick, 29-24, West Virginia got it done. It was a tight game, as both of us thought. Any takeaway you had that really stood out?
Two things, and I mentioned this in my 5 things. I've got 5 on it. I highly recommend you guys check that out if you haven't already. But game management is the first thing that jumped off the page. Just the 15-minute difference in time of possession that that advantage that West Virginia had over Kansas was very noticeable. Obviously, I felt like they did a good job of just putting together long drives, taking time off the clock. I thought they were pretty efficient with their play calling at times, pretty efficient running the ball. Now, that goes into my second thing. It's just it's hard not to point out the missed opportunities that they had. Yes, they won the game. They took care of business, but there was a lot of missed opportunities they had, whether it's, there were some drop passes, but there was a couple times, they had the ball on the 43-yard line to start out one drive, and they couldn't get anything from it. They didn't score a touchdown, no field goal. They scored five of their final 6 offensive drives, but they only scored touchdowns on 2 of those drives. So for West Virginia, especially moving forward, as Neal pointed out, you got to turn a lot of those field goals into touchdowns. You can't have field goals rather than touchdowns. You really got to capitalize on some of those possessions, especially against teams like against the Oklahomas, against the Texases, against Oklahoma State. They took care of business, but obviously there's still a lot of improvements need to be made.
Yeah, I think what you take away the most from that game is West Virginia didn't play its best. No one's going to sit here and tell you that West Virginia played a really good football game, but it goes back to what Neal talked about in fall camp. A good team, at least a serviceable team, can play bad football and still win games. And West Virginia was able to win the game. That's the part that
it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't, but it wasn't their best.
Yeah.
They didn't play their best, and they were able to win the game. And I think that's important. That's the one takeaway above all that I had is this young team found a way to go on the road. I know it's Kansas, but ask Boston College a little bit about Kansas. I think you get mixed results there, but they were able to go on the road, and win that game. And I think that's your biggest takeaway. West Virginia ran the ball effectively again, 193 yards. That's a new season high. Had a 30-yard run for the first time all year. So I think things are moving in the right direction there. Now they get to bye week. I'd be remiss before we move on to talk a little bit about ESPN Plus. I will say for myself, still not the greatest fan of the streaming service, but it worked better than I thought it would at my location.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keen. I watch it at my place. Usually for away games, I will listen to Tony Caridi, broadcast it. And normally, what I notice if they're for an away game, if the game's on FS1, if it's on ESPN, it's about a minute behind, between Caridi and wherever it's being televised. But I noticed there wasn't much of a difference. Maybe like a play behind. Maybe I didn't think it was that bad for me personally, but the little things like there not being a first down marker, I thought was kind of annoying at times. But I mean that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I do feel for people out there that do not have the internet to run that. That is unfortunate. I hope that does get addressed in the future. But all in all, just from my personal standpoint, was much smoother than I thought.
Yeah,
that could be because I had really low expectations coming in. Bye week, important for West Virginia to get some guys healed up, get some guys rested. That comes with the territory. Obviously, that's going to shift the focus to recruiting a little bit. West Virginia's the guys had off Sunday, Monday. They're going to practice today, Wednesday, Thursday. Coaches are going to go on the road Thursday, Friday, Saturday, go out and see prospects. They're going to see 2020 commitments, 2020 targets, and get a good look, eyeball some guys for 2021 already to start building some of those in-person evaluations that are absolutely critical when it comes to just building a class and building a target list. Nothing beats in-person evaluations. That's why camps are so important. So this is a chance for the coaches to do that. Recruiting takes a back seat at times during the season, especially when you're not hosting as many official visitors as West Virginia has it planned. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds from that. If any new guys emerge. Already a couple new offers out this week, and coaches haven't even hit the road yet, but that kind of tells you where the focus is shifting. From Neal's press conference today, outside of the news with Sills, something I thought was interesting and I felt to ask about it, was downfield passing. West Virginia's had opportunities this year. They've not connected for the most part. It's not a high percentage play, obviously, but West Virginia's 4 for 18 on the year. When they do hit, it works. They have 3 touchdowns on those 4 passes. But they're missing more often than they need to be, and it's something that they've got to address.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, they have to make explosive plays. Neal pointed that out. There's going to be pretty high emphasis on that moving forward. You got to hit the explosive plays,
especially in this league.
Especially in this league, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that moving on to basketball. Talked to Bob Huggins today as well. It was a double dip type deal. I think he likes this team. The old KG veteran is not tipping his hand, but I think he does like this team. He likes that they're playing together, and it's a lot of the things that last year's team simply didn't have. Interesting news, I thought. I asked about Jalen Bridges because we've had a lot of questions about whether he'd redshirt or not. I've consistently heard since he came into the fold for the 2019 class that he was going to redshirt. Bob Huggins pretty much confirmed that today, so that's the plan. He wants to redshirt, set out this season, and I think as long as something doesn't change there, that's a blue light joke, unless something changes, you should probably see him redshirting this year. I think that's pretty much the case. Now, when it comes to Osaboyan, I think I got that right, the Arkansas transfer, they're still trying to get a waiver for him. They want him to play this year. Huggins thinks that he's a guy that's high energy and is playing 4. I thought that was interesting. They're going to play him as a big. They think that he can guard people on the perimeter, he can get to the basket, he plays hard, he's good on the defensive end. He's pretty much in the mold of what Bob Huggins wants to find. Right now, you don't know. I think it's as Bob Huggins so eloquently put it, TBD, to be determined whether he plays this year, and I think that's obviously out of his hands, in the NCAA's hands. So we'll see. Otherwise, though, a lot of positive reports. Taz Sherman, he's right now the best shooter on the team. Bob Huggins said he's been really impressed with what he's been able to do. Can score on the perimeter, can score on the block. I'm excited to see some of these guys, Patrick, Anybody you're excited to see once it gets into action?
Jordan McCabe, honestly, I'm just really curious to see what he how he builds off from his freshman year. Now I know he had that minor knee surgery. Huggins was asked about that, whether or not he has slowed down or anything. He said no. I mean, he's starts off every morning in the gym. He's in the gym every night. Every morning, every night with McCabe. He doesn't wear a sleeve, doesn't wear a brace. I think part of that goes towards the fact that he doesn't want to advertise the fact that something could be wrong. But no, he said his knee's fine. He's been playing. He's been working hard at it, and I'm really curious to see how he builds off into his sophomore year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Oscar too. Oscar Shoeway. I think that Bob Huggins alluded today. He's still figuring things out.
Yeah.
Obviously he didn't get to go with the team to Spain, and that issue's still resolving itself. No update there on the visa when I have to go to Cancun, but he's got so much talent, so much talent. I've seen him since he was a freshman in high school. I watched him play. He plays with a motor that is unlike anybody I've ever seen. So I'm excited to see how that translates to the college level. Overall, though, some good vibes. We'll have a lot of content coming your way, both football and basketball. I know it's a bye week, but we're going to have a lot of recruiting stuff, a lot of football stuff, a lot of basketball stuff, and just about a lot of stuff over the next couple weeks. Before we get off here, though, we're going to do something different. We're going to talk a little bit about baseball. Patrick, this is more your... I'm going to give you the mic here.
Thanks, Keenan. Appreciate that. Big baseball news coming out of Morgantown yesterday. Head coach Randy Mazey, they announced that signed a 3-year extension. Now he's under contract for the next 6 years with the program through 2025. Total 6-year contract worth $2.49 million. Base salary $250,000. Can get $165,000 in supplemental compensation, so that brings his yearly earnings to about $415,000 plus. We broke down yesterday both on the free board and on the blue lot. He can earn $459,000 in incentives, and we broke down those incentives. I highly recommend you check those out if you haven't done so already. But knew this was coming. You had to think this was coming here at some point, especially with what he was able to do with the program this past year. The fact that the program was able to host a regional for the first time since 1955, especially when you consider the disappointment that came with the 2018 season. A lot of expectations for the Mountaineers that year, coming off their first trip to the regional in quite some time. But disappointing season 2018. They were able to respond this past year by hosting a regional. Very interested to see. We should have a media session. I'm not sure when, but I would think by the end of fall ball we should have a media session. Very curious to see the direction this team is heading right now. This is a team that lost, I believe it was 8 guys to the MLB draft. Lost 3 of their 4 starters. They lost their midweek starter, Nick Snyder. They lost Kate Stroud, who's their Sunday starter, and Alec Manoah. Obviously, he was
big
first,
piece there.
Yeah, just a little bit, first round pick. So really interested to see where this team is heading in that direction. Other holes on the roster as well, such as in the outfield, behind the plate with Ivan Gonzalez being drafted. So big project in front of Randy Mazey coming up for this upcoming season. Really curious to see how he can develop guys, develop somewhat of a young team after having this much success going in to this next season. So very interested to see where guys are playing, who could be in the weekend rotation, who could be the midweek starter. A lot of questions to have, but kind of interested to see what's going to happen there.
I mean, it's amazing how far that baseball program's come in such a short period of time. But hope you enjoyed it. This was a recapping type deal. We had a lot of stuff in here, a lot of package. Go back and watch it again if you need to. We're going to do a Q&A later this week. If you have questions, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter at RivalsKeenan. Pat?
At Patrick Kotnik.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, hit us up on Twitter. We've already got some questions in on our blue lot. But if you haven't already, if you watched this, you liked it, hit that like button, and we'll be back. This has been another episode of Musings from the Mountains.